Hopefully I'm in focus here. I've been on a journey. Let me back this up. Yeah, I think this works. I've been on a journey with this whole Linux thing on my laptops. It all started with this laptop that I had invested a lot of time, money, and effort into upgrading. It was a gift. It was given to me by my father, and I just wasn't ready to let it go. And it came with Windows 10 installed on it. I think it's from 2019. Right now, we're in March of 2026, and so what? It's but maybe 7 years old. If it came out at the beginning of 2019, but I wouldn't really consider that to be like so old that it is outdated. It was sold as a gaming laptop, although its specs are not super high. It came with a 4 gigabyte graphics card. It has an AMD Ryzen 5 CPU, but I think it came with like 8 gigabytes of RAM. I had since upgraded the RAM a couple of times actually. I upgraded from 8 to 16 gigabytes, and then the final upgrade I did RAM-wise was from 16 to 32 gigabytes. So the thing was decent. You know, it had a decent processor, had a graphics card, which at the time Windows 10 was saying it was a 4 gigabyte graphics card, which isn't like top tier or anything. Windows 11 had been out for a little while, and I think they were letting anybody upgrade at the time that it launched, or at least it wasn't super restrictive from what I remember. I just wasn't ready to upgrade, and then eventually 2025 came around, and Windows 10 was approaching end of life, and you had no other option but to upgrade unless you wanted to be on a, I guess, retired operating system that was no longer going to get any future updates and was no longer supported. So I decided last minute, I think it was back in October, no, it was before October. October was when it reached end of life for Windows 10. So it was approaching October. It was probably, I don't know, sometime in the summer, maybe July or August. I decided, you know what, it's time to go ahead and go through with the upgrade to Windows 11 because I want to continue to use this laptop. And at that point, I was ready to pull the trigger and install Windows 11. And I went to install it, and Microsoft said, no, you can't do that. There's a problem with TPM 2.0. It wasn't enabled, I guess. But it was there. It just wasn't enabled. So I went into the BIOS. I mean, I hadn't really touched a computer BIOS in years, many years. But I was able to get in there. And turns out it had a TPM 2.0 chip. Turned it on, and I thought, hey, we're good. I ran the updater again, and this time it said it didn't like my processor. And there was nothing you could do about it. Well, the documentation from what I remember when I was going to upgrade Windows 11 to Windows 11 said that I think I just needed like a 4-core 64-bit processor, and my processor definitely met those requirements on paper. And then later they started like weeding out, I guess, processors that they didn't feel were fit for it. I don't know why. It can run their operating system. There must be some other reason why they don't like it. I don't know. but they just wouldn't let me. And there were workarounds that I saw online, and I bought a used laptop that had a similar setup, and it was told that it couldn't upgrade, and I kind of forced the upgrade through methods that I found online, and it upgraded and it worked. But I don't know, I just felt like I didn't really want to do that with my main computer, because maybe at some point it would be figured out through some kind of software update or something that I shouldn't have it, and maybe it wouldn't get future updates at that point. I don't know, I just figured like it would blow up in my face at some point if I tried some kind of workaround. So I just didn't do it, and I just kept continuing to check and see if maybe they had changed their mind about what systems were approved for this upgrade. And no, it never changed. October came, which was the deadline to upgrade to Windows 11 if they had approved your system. And my system still wasn't approved, and so I couldn't upgrade. They did give an option to people to continue on with Windows 10 for a year. There were certain things that you had to agree to. I can't remember whether, I think I had to sign up for a Microsoft account, or I don't know what it was, and they would give me a year. So a year from October of last year. We're in March of 2026 now, which means I've got another 7 months, I guess. Anyway, I haven't really touched that computer much. And it kind of started me on this journey, because I want to continue using that computer. So I ended up buying a couple of used laptops, just to see what I could do. They were older than my computer, and I wanted to see what I could make happen with them. So they installed Windows 10 just fine, but obviously they couldn't upgrade to Windows 11 either. So I was on a search for an operating system that I could make work on these older laptops. And what I found was Linux. And the weird thing is I had tried Linux on a desktop setup that I had years and years ago. I mean, we're talking, it could be close to 20 years at this point. It's been at least 15. And the operating system that I had downloaded was called Mandrake. I just remembered this, and it doesn't exist any longer. I think it was either Mandrake or Mandriva. It might have been Mandriva. It doesn't exist any longer. But yeah, it had a GUI. It had folders and stuff. This was back in the days when Windows was still a thing. I think it had become Linspire at that point, and I had tried that one too. But I just couldn't get the programs that I wanted to run on it, and some of the open source alternatives just didn't work quite the same. It was definitely much more like learning something all over again, learning how to use a computer over again. And that was kind of the end of my experience with Linux back in the day. But as we fast forward through time, and I was put in this situation by the operating system that I had been using, finding out that it was no longer going to be supported. I was going to be at risk possibly if I continued to run it. And the operating system that was going to be kept up, upgradable, whatever, into the future, my system was not approved to run it. So I thought, great, I just started looking for alternatives. And at the time, I saw that Steam, which is something that I had just started using on my Windows computer, Steam to play games on my Windows computer, Steam had developed their own operating system. And I thought, well, this is great. Maybe I'll just download what they come out with, and that way I can at least continue to game on the machine. Maybe I could find some way to run Office applications, and I'm sure I could at least browse the web. I mean, you've been able to browse the web on consoles for a couple of generations of consoles at this point. So I just started looking into that, and it turned out that Steam OS was based, bugs are out already, they're enjoying the weather as well. Steam OS is based on Linux. It is a Linux variant, part of the Linux family of operating systems, I guess. But I couldn't find a way to download and install it at that time. I think it might be available now. But there was an alternative, and that alternative was this operating system called Zi8. So on one of these cheap laptops that I was able to find on Facebook Marketplace, I went ahead and bought a hard drive, installed that, put in some RAM to try to get it, as close to the system that I had as possible, and installed installed Zi8. Zi8 had the Steam software already included, I think, with the installation of Zi8. So I just opened it, added my Steam account, downloaded a game, and it just worked. It just worked. And then after that, I went into Zi8's software manager, and I was able to find like Office applications. And eventually I stumbled onto Kdenlive, which is a video editor, an application that allows you to process and create videos. And it worked a lot like what I was used to with my computer, which on my computer I was using Cyberlink's PowerDirector 16. It's old software, but it worked. It worked. It was able to create the videos that I needed. I was just shooting videos that I wanted to produce in up to 1080p, so nothing crazy. I wasn't doing a whole lot of special effects or anything like that. Just doing some basic edits. And Kdenlive felt a lot like that. So I started making a couple of videos on Zi8, and the relief that I felt on finding an alternative, it kind of led me into, and I might be misusing this word because I never use this word, exuberation. Just this feeling of joy that I had. That yes, there was an opportunity to save this other computer that I'd spent a lot of time and effort into, and I guess it had some sentimental value to me. That I was probably going to be able to continue using this machine going forward. And then that kind of just, I went down the rabbit hole, I guess you could say, and I started installing I was able to find other laptops that people were just kind of getting rid of. I think this whole Windows 10 is going away and you're not going to be able to upgrade to Windows 11 either, got people in a hurry to, I guess, maybe just kind of not necessarily dump, but try to recoup as much money as they could by selling their old equipment so that they could move on to some equipment that either had Windows pre-installed on it or was at least approved to upgrade to Windows 11. So suddenly laptops just became super cheap. And I was able to find a couple of them. And so my experience with Zi8, which I still have Zi8 running on the system I installed it on, it's still doing well. But it led me down to trying other operating systems. So I got another laptop, and on that laptop I installed Pop! OS. And Pop! OS I thought was great. Everybody's got different opinions on which OS they like better, which version, flavor, distro of Linux they like better or best. I honestly don't have a favorite at this point. I do tend to stick with the ones that are based on Debian, which you'll find that these flavors have like branches off of them. So Debian, I mean, I guess if you're going off of like the Linux hierarchy or tree or families of distributions, Debian is like one that a lot of distributions branch off of. You've got Linux Mint, a few others. Bazzite, I guess, was branched off of Fedora, which I think has a relationship to Red Hat Linux from way back in the day. I think they still exist, but I think they exist mostly for, I was going to say industrial use, but for businesses. Enterprise, that's the word I was looking for. Enterprise use. Fedora, I think, was what became of Red Hat for personal use. Anyway, Bazzite is based off of Fedora. So you got that. You got Linux, Fedora, Bazzite. Or I guess it goes Linux, Debian. No, Linux, Fedora, Bazzite. And then Pop! OS was Linux, Debian, Pop! OS. And anyway, long story short, that's how we get to today. So I'm just getting these machines that people are getting rid of, unfortunately, and it's creating. It would create garbage if somebody like me wasn't here just buying this stuff for dirt cheap. So that led me to this spot where I'm at now, and where I'm at now is just crazy. I never thought that I would be talking about what I'm about to talk about, and that is last night. I had a little bit of time to myself, and I had heard about. I've always known about live distributions ever since you could burn a Linux ISO to CD. I had known about live distributions. I think I tried Lindows way back in the day. I think that was on a live CD. I had tried the Mandriva, which I had, I'm sure, first tried out on a live CD. And so I knew about live CDs. But as the file size of your distribution gets bigger, the CDs are only like 700 megabytes. You need more space. And so now they can install from a USB, and they can even operate live off of a USB. So what I ended up doing was I started searching, and I found out that I think it was Puppy Linux could run off of a USB, and not just a live version, like a version that you could just kind of use. And what I mean by that is it had persistence. It was a live distribution with persistence. Like me, I'm persisting. I'm not taking that I have to just dump my hardware and buy some and just giving in. I'm persisting. I'm resisting, but I'm persisting with my resistance. Anyway, persistence. I'd never thought of this before. Although I think I would have liked it, and I think maybe at some point I thought, wouldn't it be great if you could like run it off of your CD or your USB stick at this point, and not only would it be live for the time that it's active on your system until you shut it down and start all over again, but what if it could do things like save the changes that you make, and maybe even save the programs that you download, and maybe even save files that you create. And it turns out that exists. It's called persistence. And anyway, I was looking into it, and it looked like there were certain versions, I think mostly versions of Linux, that are based off of Debian, that you could potentially set up for this persistence and just run it off of a USB, which would make it really handy. Like, let's say if you were traveling and you didn't have enough space, or you didn't necessarily want to take your laptop. Maybe you're going someplace where theft is really common, and you don't want to risk your laptop. If you have a USB thumb drive with an operating system that has persistence, it would be like taking your computer in your pocket, essentially. You would just have to have access to a computer somewhere when you reach your destination, but you would just connect your thumb drive to that computer. You would boot into the thumb drive, so whatever operating system the computer had on it, whether it was Windows or whatever, as long as it's got, usually it's like an x86 processor, which would be most Intel and AMD processors, you could just boot into that USB, and it would be like booting from your computer at home. It'd almost be like having remote access, but not like, it would just be there, because you have it physically connected to the computer and you're running off of it. So it's a cool idea. But I did get way deeper into this than I thought I would, and so I looked for persistence with Linux, and I found a bunch of articles, and I spent way too much time on trying to get Puppy Linux to run with persistence, and I just didn't end up doing it successfully. And I think in the early hours of the morning, I eventually called it quits and stopped trying. And then the next day happened, which was today. I was just kind of searching up persistence and operating systems, and I found information on Nomad BSD. Now, BSD is Unix-like, like Linux is Unix-like. So they're similar. I actually ended up downloading this version of BSD, Nomad BSD, and it was actually really easy to set up the USB, and I got it to run on the computer, and it felt very similar. I got into the terminal. I was able to perform some really basic stuff as root. I mean, it even used like the sudo, or how do some people pronounce that? Sudo? The way it's spelled, I would pronounce it sudo. I don't know, but I think it's like the super user command, just like you would in Linux. I'm sure the commands are different. I haven't memorized all the commands in Linux, so we live in an age of AI, which I guess would be a cheat code, but you can go into Google and you can type in, hey, I've got a USB thumb drive with Nomad BSD, and this is what I'm trying to get working, or this is the screen I'm looking at, what do I do next? And surprisingly enough, it can help to guide you through this process. But anyway, it's not perfected yet. I was hoping that with a persistent distribution that it would just run like a live distribution would, and it turns out it's not quite that simple. So I ended up going to Walmart, buying a USB. I installed Nomad BSD on this USB, got it up and running. I mean, I was able to boot into it, and I got it working. I was able to launch the browser, got it connected to my Wi-Fi. We're good, just like a live distribution. But then I tried setting up certain things with this persistence, and the real basic stuff worked. I was able to create a folder, create a file, shut down the computer, boot back up, and it was still there. So it persisted, which was awesome. And then I tried to install an application, and I think Kdenlive was what I tried to install, and that's when things just kind of fell apart on me. And I don't know if it was just the speed of the USB drive that I was using or what the case was, but it just didn't work out for me. So I spent so much time on this, and by so much time I just mean hours. It just ate up a more significant chunk of my day than I thought I was going to spend on it. And I realized that this is maybe something that I was trying to do that wasn't necessarily what people intended for it to be used for, but I wanted to give it a shot, because I thought it would be like the perfect tool. Like if you get a new computer and you don't want to necessarily install the operating system onto it immediately, why not have a live distribution with persistence that would allow you to boot through the USB, store your files, make changes, whatever, then pop that USB stick out of the computer, boot without the USB connected into whatever was pre-configured on that computer or laptop. So if you had Windows, it would just boot right into Windows like you had never done anything to it. And that's what I was hoping, but it turns out that maybe it's a little bit more complicated than that. You've got to look into like the speeds of your USB drive, and just a few other things that make it not as easy as I was hoping it might be. But that's where I'm at with this. It took a lot more time out of my weekend than I was hoping for, but I don't know. In the end, I'm hoping that I'll find some kind of success. If anybody ends up watching this, if you've had success, whether it's BSD or Linux or any other operating system, and you want to leave a comment, go ahead and do so, because I'd be happy to hear like how well you were able to make it happen. I watched some YouTube videos on people setting up persistence on Linux distributions, and they make it look so easy. The videos are like less than 10 minutes long. I don't know why or how it ended up taking me, a whole day to just end up failing. But I don't know. I just didn't have the luck that they had with it, I guess, or I'm just not as knowledgeable as they are. I'm finding that out all the time. That's why I'm glad I have tools like AI. I'm not just saying just give up and give everything over to AI, but AI I feel like is a useful tool for certain scenarios like the one I found myself in. But anyway, that's my video for today. I don't have any cool screens to show you on a new setup or anything like that. I just wanted to make sure I had a video to post, and maybe something interesting to talk about. Maybe give somebody some ideas or something. And yeah, again, it was Nomad BSD is what I tried. But if you have any recommendations, you can go ahead and leave a comment. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.